All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Emotional Intelligence for Leaders. My name is David Wu, former president of Money Talks Toastmaster Club at the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank, and I'm also a current member. Some housekeeping, this webinar will be recorded, so by turning on your camera or speaking, you consent to being recorded. The recording may appear on District 4's website or YouTube channel. As we get started, please mute yourself and turn off your camera now. You have the opportunity to unmute and turn on your camera to applaud and thank the speaker at the end of the webinar. For the best viewing experience, please enable Zoom's hide non-video participant setting. To do this, if you could follow me, go to the bottom, click the arrow next to the video button. There's a little arrow on top. You click that, then select video settings, and then check hide non-video participants box. So during this presentation, you have the opportunity to ask questions via the public chat or by directly messaging me. So please limit the comments to the public chat to questions for and responses to the speakers only. And our speakers did mention that this would be a conversational speech, so that we encourage everyone to comment and engage. Now, I'm very excited to introduce our two speakers, Tony and Sarah. Let me start with Tony. Tony is actually from France. He is multilingual, loves paddleboarding, and is a nature lover. Tony Saccardi, DTM, he is a certified Daniel Goleman emotional intelligence coach. He's an accredited member of the International Coach Federation and a certified mindfulness trainer. So Tony's experience includes 25 years in the corporate world, working as a consultant in the IT sector. And he was also a technology director. Tony has been a member of Toastmasters International since 2007, and he's had the opportunity to serve multiple times in all kinds of officer roles. His passion and his day job since 2018 is to help leaders and executives understand the science of emotional and social intelligence so that they can create a culture of trust, collaboration, and appreciation. Let's welcome Tony. All right, so we have Tony. Right next to Tony is also Sarah. Sarah, fun facts about Sarah. Sarah played collegiate soccer at UC Davis, and she is a triathlete. Her favorite activity is mountain biking though. And her work from home office, I don't know if you can see it, is an Airstream in front of her home. A lot of trees. About Sarah. Sarah is a leadership and performance consultant. She's also a coach based in the San Francisco Bay Area. She has been a member of Toastmasters for the last 4 years. Sarah works with high performance executives and athletes. She is the director of client strategies, faculty member, and meta coach at Goleman and a professional certified coach through the International Coach Federation. She is also the founder of EI Focus, a nonprofit organization whose purpose is to empower women and girls in sports with emotional intelligence. With that, I will hand over the stage to Sarah and Tony. I'll let them take it over, and I'll come back for a Q&A session at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for the introduction. It's so nice to see you all here. This is so nice to have so many people come to our session. Thank you very much for being here. We have a full agenda, so we'll get started right on it. So I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to be able to see, hopefully, the slides. And let's see. Okay, now everybody should be able to see the slides, right? Okay, confirm. Wonderful. So our agenda today, and I'm so delighted to go through this with you, and especially with Sarah, who is really like, you know, top-notch coach and emotional intelligence trainer. Our agenda today is about EQ, emotional intelligence, how to improve your emotional intelligence as a leader. We're going to talk about what is emotional intelligence, why it's important, and then we're going to talk about leadership and especially teamwork, the foundational emotional intelligence skills that you need to be a team player, to be a real leader. And that's going to be self-awareness, emotional control, empathy, and especially with the emphasis on listening. And after that, we'll have time for Q&A. The session is going to be not so much a lecture or just talk, and we want that to be engaging. We want you to participate. So there will be a few times during the session where we'll ask you to participate and write in the chat. Please do so. Please engage with us and participate so we can have a real conversation about emotional intelligence. So let's get started now. I'd like to see in a few words, what is emotional intelligence for you? What does it mean? And how can it help you with your leadership in Toastmasters or anywhere else? Thanks, Roberta. So understanding what others are feeling, very important. Emotional intelligence can help you with that.
Listening. And we're going to talk about listening today. Yes.
Definitely. Empathy, wonderful.
Making room for you and your team to bring their whole selves to the conversation, definitely. And recognizing your feelings from a dispassionate place, knowing the appropriate thing to say in a situation, good relationships, improving relationships. Yes, all of these things.
Definitely. Being able to influence others through your relationships. Stay grounded amid chaos, yes.
And navigate stressful situations. It's so true.
Forgiving, I like that, yes. Knowing your own feeling, understanding your biases, definitely. Wow. This is very advanced, so I'm so happy. That gives us the tone like of where we can go with this. It feels like you already have a good grasp on the emotional intelligence, so that will allow us to maybe go a little bit deeper than usual. Do you agree, Sarah?
I think so. I think this is a great conversation. Yes.
Okay, all right. So we're going to get started. So why EQ and what does it matter more than IQ? And by IQ, we mean the regular level of intelligence and the technical skills and so on. When Dan Goleman did his research and wrote his book on emotional intelligence, he said that you can have a high IQ, the best possible ideas, the best technical skills. If you don't have some of the competencies of emotional intelligence, you'll never be a great leader. They did some research and they found out that for jobs of all kinds, EQ was more important 66% of the time. 66% of the time, it was a better predictor of leadership, of star performers than IQ. And when it comes to jobs like in leadership, such as the executives, like the people who are at the top, it accounted for 85%. Emotional intelligence accounted for success of CXOs 85% of the time compared to IQ. And Sarah, I know you've done some research as well, and you know what research has been done on this.
Yeah, and I'd just like to just add on to what you've said, Tony, about this, how Daniel Goleman went about this research. And so he was looking at hundreds of leaders and hundreds of organizations and found that, and I think many of us can experience this at some level, everybody's got technical skills and credentials, so degrees, certifications, and so on. But then there are these peak performing leaders, and there's something about them. There's something about them that draws people to them, that motivates people. People want to work hard for them. So what is it about these people that creates this motivation and this, that they can be such inspiring leaders? And what was determined was these 12 competencies of emotional intelligence. And we're going to go through all of these and share with you what these specific skills are. And I also want to add one exciting piece of news here, is that sometimes we think that we're either born with it or we're not. But that's not true. We can learn these skills, and that is the exciting part. So that's why we're here, is to share what are these skills, and give a little tips and tools on how can we begin to build our own emotional intelligence.
Thanks, Sarah. This is really about the leadership skills, and I want to show you this slide so we can think a little bit about where we are in our leadership skills.
Yeah, so
There are very different styles, and I want to think about what is your dominant style. Is it a hierarchical, directive style? Do you expect others to follow orders? Do you want to macromanage? Or is your tendency to be slightly manipulative? Do you make promises? Do you trade favors? Do you use a carrot and a stick? And or are you coercive? And coercive means you're a pace setter. You work really hard, like long hours, and you expect others to do the same. Or you may be self-centered. Maybe you like to have the limelight on yourself, and you forget a little bit to give some to your team, which is very important. So those are some of the old leadership styles that we want to leave behind us. And with emotional intelligence, we can move up towards different types of leadership. And Sarah is going to talk about them.
yes, so are you a visionary? Visionary is the person who sees what's possible and leads your team in that direction. Are you participative? Do you participate in the decision making? Are you part of the team? Are you acting as coach and mentor? Meaning, are you, instead of telling your people what to do, are you encouraging them to find their own answers? Are you affiliative? Are you there as part of the group, supporting the group and helping solve some of the problems within the group? So these are some of the leadership styles, and EQ, we are looking to how can we be kind of on top of this line here of leadership styles.
So let's go to the chat again and take a look where your thoughts are right now. What are the interpersonal skills that will help you the most? And I'm focusing on Toastmasters, but again, it can be at work, it can be anywhere else. Being able to lead by example, wonderful.
Teamwork.
Teamwork.
Listening.
I love this. Do not assume, yeah, not making assumptions. That's a very good one.
Active listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's so great because we are talking about many of these topics coming up. Listening.
Yeah, learning how to disagree in a constructive way. That's part of conflict management. It's very good for teams to argue on something. You don't want everybody to agree all the time. You need to be able to disagree. Listening, empathy, wonderful. Being flexible. This is great. So what is emotional intelligence? How can we work better together? Emotional intelligence is divided in 4 domains. We have self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. In turn, those 4 domains are divided into 12 competencies. And Sarah is going to introduce us to those 12 competencies.
And before I dive into this, there's many different ways to explain emotional intelligence. And what is the definition anyway? We hear about it, we read about it, but what is it? I like to think of emotional intelligence as the ability to understand our emotions and recognize how they affect our performance and our relationships. And as we go through these 4 domains, we'll explain. So here are the 12 skills, the 12 skills of emotional intelligence that when we spoke about the high performers, these were the skills that these high performers, I think 80 to 90% of them showed. So it begins with self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence, and it all starts here. It starts with ourselves, being able to recognize what we're feeling, how our emotions show up in our bodies, and tuning into those clues because they give us information. And then we move into self-management and self-control, emotional control. How then do we recognize our feelings and then decide what happens next? How do we manage what happens next? Adaptability, being able to go with the flow. I heard that in the chat, being flexible. Achievement orientation, setting goals for ourselves. And then positive outlook. Our brains, we are wired to look for those things that are difficult. We're wired to look for the deficits in our lives. And so we need to pay attention so that we can flip our outlook into becoming more positive, because when we do so, it gives us energy, it motivates us, and it motivates others. And then as we move into social awareness, empathy, how can we understand what others are feeling? Organizational awareness is really important when we're looking at our organization. Who are the key decision makers? How do we relate to them? And then as we move into relationship management, how can we be an influential leader? Are we walking our talk? I read that in the chat as well. Coach and mentor, bringing out the best in others, because sometimes and oftentimes they have the answers within themselves. And how can we as leaders ask the right questions? How can we listen and be there so that we can empower our people to come up with their own answers and feel empowered? Teamwork, being part of the team. Conflict management, how can we navigate conflict? How can we bring it out into the open in an effective way rather than bearing it and hoping it goes away potentially? And inspirational leadership, again, how can we show up as an inspiring leader that motivates people, that people want to be around? And actually we're talking about in organizations, and that can mean Toastmasters, but really these skills apply to all parts of our lives, with our families and our friends and all. So that's the great thing about emotional intelligence. It's not just for leadership in our organizations, it's for leadership in life.
So true, it can change your life, basically. And so those are the 12 competencies. And obviously in 1 hour, we will not be able to go through all those competencies. So we chose to go through only a few of them that are going to help us today with teamwork and leadership. So we're going to go through self-awareness, because without self-awareness, nothing else is possible. We need to be aware of what's going on inside before we can make any changes. Emotional control, that's the key of self-management, to be able to not only recognize your emotion, recognize what's going on, but have some control. And we're not talking about repressing, ignoring the emotions. We're talking about understanding the emotion and being able to use that energy for something that's useful. And finally, we're going to talk about empathy. And empathy is going towards other people, not being so self-centered, but being other-centered. So, Sarah, do you want to get us started on self-awareness?
Yes, thank you, Tony. And I love this slide. There's this little kitty cat here who looks in the mirror and sees a big lion. This is how this little cute, adorable cat sees herself. And sometimes it may be different than others see her. So self-awareness is this ability to tune into what is going on for us, how we are feeling emotionally. When we can name our emotions, we are less likely to be carried away by them. And there are many different practices in developing our self-awareness. And one of them is simply taking a moment to tune in. And for instance, as a speaker coming into a conference, sometimes I get butterflies in my stomach. And if I don't stop for a moment to pay attention to, okay, what is that? What are those butterflies telling me? Because it's information. Well, I can tell myself, this often happens no matter what. Every time I show up in front of a group at Toastmasters or whenever I'm speaking, these are simply butterflies that maybe I'm feeling a little bit nervous. And that is a cue for me to then, okay, calm, put my feet on the ground and take a few breaths. rather than, if I didn't notice, I might just jump right into what I'm doing. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, what happens when I do that is maybe I lose track of where I am. I don't feel as present or grounded. I might forget what I'm supposed to say. But by tuning in to how I'm feeling, I have the opportunity to decide what happens next.
Wonderful. And self-awareness is self-awareness of the emotions, of what's going on inside. Do we have a fear? Are we judging someone? Are we judging ourselves? And also the mental state. What are we telling ourselves? What is the narrative inside? Are we saying words that are discouraging and putting us in a place where by association we're going to be discouraged? Everything can be accounted for. Everything is connected. The way our body's positions, our facial expression, whether we smile or not, whether we are frowning or not, our emotions inside and our thoughts, everything is connected. So you change one thing and then you can influence the others. They did some experiments with people, asking them to hold like, I forgot what it was, like a pen like this. And when you do this, you need to smile in order to hold it like this. And as they were smiling, it changed their brain. Like, they could see inside of the brain that they were becoming more positive, happier. And when they did the opposite, to hold the pen like this, then it makes you frown a little bit. And then people get a little bit unhappy. So just changing your facial expression has an effect on how you feel. And your position as well, your body, can have also an effect on how you feel. So if you take a dignified position, chances are you'll be more focused and you'll be happier inside than if you are like this. So everything counts. Everything you do counts. But the first thing that's the most important is to be aware of what's going on, and then know that you have the power to change it.
I'd love to add just a quick little story there. I work with one leader who he'd go into meetings and he was just getting feedback that wasn't making sense with how he was feeling. He was feeling happy, upbeat, but his people in the leadership team were kind of standoffish, like, whoa, what's happening here? Finally, he had a conversation with somebody, and it turns out that this leader, while they thought they were smiling, he thought he had a smile on his face, but actually the smile didn't come across that way. His natural smile seemed kind of like a growl. And from that time on, he actually, what he calls it facial yoga, because he has to practice. What does it feel like? What does it look like in the mirror when I'm smiling? And what does it feel like in my body, so that I know that I'm doing it, so that I can express what I'm feeling to others, because they weren't picking up on it because of his facial expression.
That's why feedback is so important. I'm going to move on a little bit because we're getting like a little bit behind. So self-awareness, again, we have the conscious and the unconscious. And Sarah, what is the conscious? What are we conscious of?
Oh, the conscious, so this is a wonderful illustration of an iceberg. And what we see on the surface is our behaviors, really. This is what is visible to ourselves, to others. And this is what's on top of the surface. But what we're working here with emotional intelligence is this underneath, what's underneath the surface: our emotions, our habits, our biases, our filters, our self-limiting beliefs. And it's interesting because these are the things that affect what happens on top of the surface. So it all starts here.
And it's very easy, like anytime you think about yourself doing something special. So maybe you want to take a role in Toastmasters. Maybe you want to become, have an important role. Maybe you want to be a program director or do something that you haven't done before. And as soon as you do that, you can feel inside the energy like, wow, it'd be so cool to do something like this. But then you have those voices coming. It could be the inner censor, the inner judge coming in and says, oh, wait a minute, you cannot really do this because you failed at this, you failed at that, and you're not very good at this. And then those voices come in, and that's what we're talking about. That's the unconscious. If we identify with them, we don't see them. We think it's us. and we go with it. But if we have the power of self-awareness, we realize that those are just voices and we don't always need to listen to them. So it's not just emotions, it's broader than that. So now we're going to talk about emotional control. And Sarah, you got the mic again.
Emotional control. So it starts with self-awareness, understanding what it is we're feeling. And then that enables us to manage what happens next. We can decide how we want to show up. This person in this photo here, I'm guessing, may not have tuned into, okay, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry, whatever it might be for him. And possibly he looks to me like maybe he went on autopilot right then and lost control. Emotional control is the ability to tune into how you're feeling. So that self-awareness piece, which is so important. And then, okay, make the decision. How do I want to show up? What happens next? And Tony's going to explain a little bit about what happens in the brain when we call this an amygdala hijack. This person in the photo here is having an emotional amygdala hijack. And Tony, please explain what that means, because it
Thank you,
helps.
Sarah. I definitely will. And another thing I want to point out is that as a leader, when you get in that state, you're having those emotions of anger or fear, it's affecting the people around you. So now all your team is affected and they cannot be as productive as they should be. So as a leader, you don't want to have your emotions like this take control and affect other people. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to do a little exercise together to understand the amygdala hijack.
I'd love to share one more thing about what happens when you're the leader in the room. And the research shows that the leader in the room, your emotions have the most impact on everybody in the room. So as the leader, it is key that you tune into your emotions, that you learn to manage them, because they're completely contagious.
All right, so now for the exercise, I hope you're all ready. And I'm going to ask you to do this with me. It's very important that you do it with me. You're going to remember it not only with your intellect, but also with your body, because I want you to remember that. This is very important. This is the amygdala hijack. So we're going to use the hand model of the brain. So I'm asking you to raise your hand like this with me. And then fold your thumb like this. And then wrap your fingers on top of your thumb, just like that. Okay, so this is your brain. This is your spine right here, your arm, and your fist right here, the way it is right now, that's your brain. Now we're going to do open brain surgery and look at what's inside. So let's open the brain. So the part at the bottom here, underneath the thumb, is the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain is what we share with reptiles about survival, it's physiology. It's the place where we go into the fight or flight mode. That's where the hormones are going into the fight or flight mode. The thumb above it is what we share with mammals, is our limbic brain, what we call also the emotional center of the brain. That's where we have the emotions, strong emotions like fear, like anger, and so on. And it's not just about survival, about defending yourself against a threat potentially to your body. It's also defending your family. Animals defend their little ones, their groups, and it's also about status. If you look at the mammals like wolves or monkeys, and they live together, and they really care about their hierarchy. So this is defending you physically, but also it's defending your status. And so that's why when someone says something about us that we find insulting, we can go into a very, very, very deep anger. On top of all this, all the four fingers, that's the neocortex, what we share with the higher mammals, the primates. And usually it's wrapped around the emotional center to keep it in check. But once in a while, we can have what we call an amygdala hijack. Something happens that's really affecting us. Now, it could be like a deadline, the tax are due and we're not ready. It could be something someone said, someone got in front of the line, or something happened on the freeway, many things can trigger us. But you get a trigger and it triggers your amygdala. And when the amygdala is triggered, what it does is that it will send hormones down to the reptilian brain and the rest of the body that will put you in the fight or flight mode. And now suddenly you have all this energy inside that wants you to run or to fight or to freeze maybe. And it's your heart is beating faster, your breath is shallower, and all these physical sensations are happening. On top of that, when you have an amygdala hijack, it not only sends those hormones down, it's also inhibits what makes us human, the rational part of the brain. This little finger here, the index finger, is the prefrontal cortex, the thing that's highly developed only in humans. And it's your rational brain. It's the one that can plan ahead. It's the one that can say, okay, I'm not going to do this right. I'm going to refrain from doing something, from getting the reward now so I can have a bigger reward later. It's really what makes us human. But when you have an amygdala hijack, it's being inhibited. And that's why when we're in that state, that we're in the deep state of anger or fear, like Sarah was saying, about to get on stage and deliver a speech, maybe in front of like 200 people, we can suffer an amygdala hijack. And suddenly we feel like we can't think anymore. And we have all this energy inside. So we need to be able to get out of the amygdala hijack. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Before we do that, let me share the screen again. And go to the next slide. So I just want to recap quickly what we just talked about. So this is your brain in a nutshell. Like there's a reptilian brain, limbic brain, neocortex, and prefrontal cortex, or PFC. When we get triggered, it triggers fear in the limbic brain. It wakes up the amygdala. The amygdala sends hormones down to the reptilian brain, and we have all this energy, the heartbeat faster, the breathing shallow. And then the PFC is inhibited. So our little Einstein inside is being inhibited and we can't think correctly anymore. And then we go into fight flight mode and we may do something we're going to regret later. So it's very important to be aware of the amygdala hijack, to be aware of a trigger so we can be ready for emotional control. And Sarah, you've worked with Olympians and athletes and people who really can be subject to an amygdala hijack when it's about to enter the competition. And you've worked with them and you have exercises to control that. So I'll let you take the stage.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, I'll give an example. I work with incredible athletes and coaches, and we all get triggered by certain things. And I'll just give an illustration with a story about a coach who would get triggered by a referee. And many of us have seen this where there's a bad call and the coach just goes crazy. And in this case, this coach was losing sight of her team, and the team ended up without a coach during those moments where she was in her amygdala hijack. And after some work on her own self-awareness and work on emotional intelligence, she learned how to manage herself. And these are the steps that she goes through. And it's called the STOP model. And it starts with first slowing down. Okay, how am I feeling? What's going on inside? I'm feeling triggered. I'm feeling irritated. I'm angry. There was just a really bad call. Okay, that's the time now where I need to take a deep breath and slow down, take a deep breath and calm, observe what's going on. My team is without a coach in this moment. Okay, I need to shift my attention now to the team and stop focusing in on this bad call that was made by the referee. I'm now with my team again, and I can move on, and we're moving on as a team. This coach then, she was able to identify that this would happen, and she would go through these steps, and before long, she was able to just manage herself. She was out of that amygdala hijack. She was in her prefrontal cortex that Tony mentioned, where she can make decisions and be there for her team to lead.
Wonderful, Sarah. Thank you so much. So remember the stop exercise. Slow down, realize what's going on, and then create a space. Take a deep breath so you can observe your thoughts, your feelings, and then as you do that, maybe change what you're thinking inside, what you're telling yourself, change the narrative, and go to something that's going to help you get out of the amygdala hijack. So now we're going to talk about empathy. Empathy is a very interesting subject. There are some people who have more empathy than others, but the kind of empathy we're talking about here may be a little bit different. It's about sensing what's going on in other people, what they are really feeling. And we can do that in different ways. We're going to talk about that later. But before we can do that, before we can have empathy for other people, we need to have empathy for ourselves. We need to have self-compassion, self-empathy. And a lot of people don't realize that, but the way we treat ourselves often is even worse than we treat other people. We were talking about the types of leadership earlier on. There was one type that was the coercive type of leadership, the pace setter, the person who is working really hard, long hours and so on, and expect everybody to do the same. Do they treat themselves really well? I'm not sure about that. And there are many things we do with ourselves that we would not dare do with someone else. Before we can have real empathy, real compassion for someone else, we need to do the same thing for ourselves. We say it's the same thing as the oxygen mask in a plane. In a plane, they tell you if there's a problem, we'll let the oxygen mask go down. But before you help other people, help yourself. Get the oxygen first, so you'll be able to help the other people afterwards. The same thing is true with empathy. So when we talk about empathy, first think about what state are you in? How do you treat yourself right now? And once you know you're in the right place, then you can extend the same to other people genuinely. We have different types of empathy, and Sarah is going to guide us through the different types of empathy.
I love these three different types of empathy because I had a client once who said to me, he says, I'm not empathetic. I don't cry when I see something when someone else is in pain. So I don't have empathy. And I was excited to be able to understand and explain to him that while having tears because someone else has tears is definitely a form of empathy, but there are three types here. Cognitive empathy is the ability to be able to understand how somebody else is feeling. So for instance, my client, he could understand how someone else was feeling. So he had cognitive empathy. Emotional empathy is what he was referring to because maybe he didn't have the tears when someone else was crying. But emotional empathy is the ability to feel in your own body. And maybe it's not tears, maybe it's that feeling in your heart or in your chest. It's going to be different for each of us. But emotional empathy is the ability to feel what someone else is feeling. And it's not always with the difficult emotions. It's feeling excited when someone else is excited. And then empathetic concern is when we talk about compassion, this is really what we're talking about, is to be so moved by somebody else that we are moved to act in a way to relieve their suffering.
Thank you, Sarah. Now we go to listening. And with empathy, once we have empathy for other people, it becomes easier to listen to them because we really care. We genuinely care about them and we want to help them. There was some research done, and there's in a recent book from Gallup called It's the Manager, they say that millennials and the new generation, especially the Gen Z, they don't want to come to work for a paycheck, and they don't want to have a boss. They're not interested in having a classical manager who tells them what to do. They want a coach and a mentor. They want someone who really cares about them, who will talk about their career and help them, someone who's able to listen to them. So listening is very important. Now, one of the problem I have and everybody has when we listen to someone is that we always go to our personal experience. We tend to be self-centered. So it's very important when you listen to someone to listen to them and to think about them and not about ourselves. What are the common pitfalls of listening, Sarah?
Oh, I heard that listening came up a lot in the chat earlier, and listening is a skill we can learn, we can get better at. And these are some of the pitfalls of listening. Confirmation bias. Are we looking to confirm what we already know? Are we listening because we, again, related to confirmation bias, we know it all already. So we're halfway there listening, but we're not really, because we already know the answer. Are we an empty space filler? Do we need to jump in? Do we allow for silence? Or are we just constantly jumping in or cutting people off when they're trying to talk? And again, impatient interrupter, indifferent and apathetic, like, I don't really care. I'm going to sit here, go through the motions, but I'm not really here listening. Mind wandering. Am I present? Am I listening? Or am I thinking about what I need to make for dinner, or the next call coming up, or something else? Contrarian. Am I listening and just whatever this person says, I've got something else to say in response, contrary to maybe what they're trying to say? Am I a fault finder? Am I looking for the faults in this person? Or am I there with them? And so these are some of the pitfalls that we can experience as we show up as listeners, which is so key to building empathy and to being able to relate to others.
It's not so much that some people have it and some people don't. We all have that. And even through this presentation, as you were listening, you probably went through all of those states. And then the difference between someone who's got like a higher level of emotional intelligence and someone who doesn't is that how quickly you recover, how quickly you recognize that you are in the confirmation bias or in the know-it-all state, and how quickly you can come back and listen to the conversation. We're going to do a small exercise. It's very important when you want to be a good listener to care, genuinely care about the other person. Everything in emotional intelligence using the Goleman framework is related to neuroscience. Dan Goleman worked really closely with Richard Davidson from the University of Wisconsin, who's done like years and years of research on emotions, using fMRI to look at the brain of people who've been meditating for like thousands of hours, and searching the brain of other people to see what's happening when they're under different circumstances. And so everything is based on sound science. For example, we were talking about empathy and being able to know other people. There are some places in the brain that will change as you grow your empathy. We were talking about self-awareness. There is a place in the brain called the insula that's kind of a little map of everything that's inside, all the visceral system. And when you develop your self-awareness using some practice we do, like body scans and so on, you develop the insula, you make it stronger, and you become more aware of what's going on. As soon as there's a little change, like, you know, cold, hot, emotional or not, and you can feel it right away. So it's really based on science and developing some parts of the brain. One part of the brain that we want to develop is the parietal lobe, which has to do with the kinship, recognizing other people as being our kins, as being like us, as being part of the same team. When we can do that, then we can genuinely care and empathize with them, just like we do with our good friends and family. So we're going to do an exercise together. We're going to do an exercise where you're gonna pick someone, and maybe someone you don't know, you don't really agree with, and then we're going to try to really connect with them. So do this exercise with me, like wherever you are right now. If you're sitting down, or if you can find a comfortable position, dignified but comfortable, relaxed positions, and then if you want, you can close your eyes, and then connect with your breath. Check how your breathing is, maybe some deeper breathing. Feel your feet on the floor. You can put your hands on your lap and find a relaxed state. Connect with your body, your breath, and now connect with your heart, with your chest. Bring your focus to that part of your body, to the chest area, to your heart. And bring to mind the people you really care about, your family, your very good friends, people who make you smile when you think about them. And feel the sensations inside, in your chest, in your heart. And now bring to mind someone you don't really know, someone you'd like to connect with. It could be someone at work, someone in your community, someone you've met at the bus stop. Bring that person to mind, someone you don't know really well, but you'd like to connect with. And with this person in mind, repeat after me. This person has a body and a mind just like me. This person has thoughts and feelings just like me. This person has been afraid at times, just like me. This person wants to have friends, just like me. This person wants to learn about life, just like me. And finally, say to them, from that place, from your chest, from your heart, may you be well, may you be safe, may you be happy. May you be well, may you be safe, may you be happy. And slowly come back to your breath, to your body, your feet on the floor. And when you're ready, slowly, gently open your eyes. When you do this exercise with people you don't know, or even people you're having difficulty with, you don't agree with, you're kind of creating a bridge. You're using that part of the brain that's about kinship and relating to them in a different way, bringing them in as part of the team, as part of your family. And it opens ways you can communicate with this person because now you open that space where you care about them. So now you want to listen to them. You want to be curious about them. It's very effective at work when you want to create a team or when you want to influence people. If there are people you don't really know, but you want to be able to influence them, you have to use empathy. They have to feel that you care for them. And we cannot, some people can fake it, but the best way to do it is to do this, to genuinely care about them. So this is the end of the presentation, and we're going to move to the Q&A part. And I'd like you to go back and think, like, what have you learned during this presentation? Has it changed the way you look at emotional intelligence and what it can help you with? And I want to open it as well to the Q&A. So for the Q&A, David, I believe we ask people to write in the chat. They can write their questions directly in the chat.
Yes, Tony. Thank you,
Okay.
Tony and Sarah. So I'll be feeding you the questions. I already have some. The first question is, for people who lack self-awareness, how do you encourage or help them to see how they are coming across? And if there's no recognition of needing to build self-awareness, how do you influence those people?
So we're asking, like, we know someone who doesn't have any self-awareness and we want to influence them.
Correct.
Yeah, I get this question every time. And basically it amounts to how can we change someone else? And we cannot really change other people. We all know people who have difficulties, maybe with emotional control, with self-awareness or something else. And we cannot really change others, and we don't want to. It belongs to them. What we can do is feel empathy for them, be curious about them, and be a coach and a mentor to them. And it's not with the optic of I want to change that person because they should be different. It's more with the optic of I want to understand that person, what life is like for them, and not judge their character, not say they are this or that, they're lazy or whatever, but try to understand their circumstances. When it's about ourselves and something happens, and like, let's say we're late to a meeting, we have circumstances. We understand that our intention is the best intention, and there were circumstances keeping us from achieving our best intention. When it is other people, we have this funny bias that says that makes us think about not about the circumstances, but their character. So we go to the character. Someone cuts me up on the freeway, and I think it's a reckless driver. So I go after their character. If I do the same thing on the freeway, it's because I have a good excuse. I have circumstances leading me to do that. I got to rush to the hospital. I'm really late for the most important meeting in my life. I have circumstances, but once someone else is doing it, I go to their character. And that's what we want to change. With emotional intelligence, we understand that for everybody, there are circumstances. And we give them the benefit of the doubt. We want to see what's highest in ourselves, and we want to see what's highest in other people. When we do that, we create a bridge. We create a possibility for the other person to realize where they are and maybe to climb a little bit higher. Sarah, do you want to add something to it?
Just to kind of reiterate what I had said, what we talked about earlier is you as the leader or you as the friend or the parent modeling this behavior. So when you're not seeing self-awareness in somebody else, we can't control other people. We can control ourselves. When you model self-awareness and being present for this person, this is an incredibly powerful way to influence others.
Thank you, Tony and Sarah. So the next question I wanted to ask, how can you speak to how to develop empathy for self? Right? It's not easy. We have to first start with forgiveness. Any of you have any tips for us?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with, I would say, there's the nature and nurture. Nurture is all the education that we've had, the role models, the people around us, the peers, and so on. And that may drive us to be a high achiever. And it's very common for high achiever to look down on themselves. They're never good enough. It's a form of sabotage, like, to instead of lifting you up and allowing you to go to the places where you want to go, it's keeping you in place from changing. Self-empathy, self-compassion is very important, and how you achieve that is by looking inside and looking at the way you talk to yourself. The way you talk to yourself is very important. Changing the words that you're using, the names that you're calling yourself, and the tone of the voice inside. If you can just do that, just for a few minutes, you'll see a change. There's a wonderful book called The Four Agreements from Don Miguel Ruiz. And the four agreements are to be impeccable with your words, to not make assumptions, to not take anything personally, and to always do your best. Very, very wonderful advice. The first one, to be impeccable with your word, has to do with what I'm talking about. The way you communicate with yourself inside, your inner narrative is very important. If you can clean that up, and the way you think about yourself, the way you talk to yourself is going to change your relation to yourself. And that's how you start with self-empathy and self-care.
And one little saying that we've talked about this in our emotional intelligence is we don't have to believe everything we think.
So true.
Thank you, Tony. The next question for you too. How do you trick your brain to thinking that someone is who's very different from you to be the person who's just like you?
Yeah, and don't we need that, today in our country, in the world, we're so divided. And we see so many people who have totally different, opposite opinions, who are fed different fights, different information. Would it be nice if we could all work together again, if we could all get along? That's what we need. And we can do that through empathy. And the Just Like Me exercise can help you with that. You start with what you can do. Start with the people that you really love, genuinely your friends, your family, and really feel it inside. And when you do that, you're opening up those circuits that are empathic, the circuits that care about the other people. Then do it for yourself, because like we said, we need to put the oxygen mask on before we can give it to someone else. And try to feel as good as you can about yourself and what you're doing. And once you've done that, go to the people you don't really know. Like we're saying, the person you met at the bus stop, the person you don't know really well at work. And once you are able to do that, you go to the next stage, which are the people you disagree with. And all of us, we have a lot of people like this in our lives. It can be at work, can be in our family, but there is always someone we have difficulties having a good communication with. That's the last step. You do it with this person. You do exactly the same thing. You realize that they are just like you. There is so much more that is alike between you and them than is different. So you put the differences aside and you focus on what is alike and what is the same and wish them well. And if you can do that, and at the beginning it may be very hard again, if you can do that, then it's going to change your relationship to that person.
And it goes also back to the listening and being there. So listening and being curious about that person and asking questions, because guaranteed, the more questions, the more curious you can be, you will find something, some similarities.
About asking those questions, how should we go about having that conversation with our managers or leaders about self-awareness or emotional intelligence?
Having a conversation with your leaders, your managers.
Correct.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. And I think if you again, it's about leading by example. And when you're a leader, you don't lead only the people who are working for you or reporting for you. You're also a leader for your peers, for everybody who is watching you, including your own manager and their managers. So think of you as yourself as a leader, as someone who is leading by example. And if you show something to your manager and they like it, it's likely they're going to ask you about it. They're going to ask, "Oh, what is the change that I'm seeing here? How come you're so good now at influencing others, at working in the team?" And then you can tell them, "Oh, wow, I learned this, I learned that. You may be interested in it."
Leading by example.
Thank you, Tony and Sarah. So I have one comment from one of our guests that they loved the last part about the meditation where we really felt that we were just like the other person. And now I want to have one last question from the audience for you two. What is one thing that we could do today? Right? You showed us a lot of golden nuggets today. What is one thing that we could practice today to improve our EQ?
I would offer start with empathy, the last thing we talked about. And depending on where you are on that scale, I would say reach out to someone. If you're really courageous, reach out to someone who is very different from you, who thinks differently. Um, and if that's too hard for you, then go to someone you don't know very well. Reach out to someone you don't know very well and offer them your attention, your undivided attention, really listening to them and being curious about them for a few minutes. Everybody wants to be heard and seen. It's not that we want to be right. We often get stuck in this thing about being defensive and wanting to be right, but that's not what we really want. What we want is to be heard and seen. If you can offer to your attention to someone, it's going to change the way they relate to you. So do this. Try to connect with someone today, someone you don't know or someone you disagree with, and offer your attention for a few minutes.
And I would say after this call, take a moment, notice how you're feeling, write down your emotions. 3 things. How are you feeling? When you can start to identify and name your emotions, you're less likely to get into that amygdala state. You're less likely to be taken over by those emotions. So writing down 3 emotions that you're feeling.
Start with empathy and write down how we're feeling right after this.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Tony, for your wonderful presentation and conversation today. I truly learned a lot. We had a lot of questions from the audience. Unfortunately, I cannot get to all of them. So for the audience, if you have further questions too, you're welcome to contact Tony and Sarah at with their contact information. I believe Tony and Sarah will be putting their contact info in the chat box right now.
Yeah, I wanted to put a registration link into the chat. I don't know if I was successful with that. Oh yeah, here's everyone. Let me do this. So this is a place where you can go and you can register with us. So if you liked what you heard today and you want to hear more and you're interested in emotional intelligence, that's the best way to be in contact with us. And we're going to send you some goodies and we're going to also let you know when we're doing something special. And of course, connect with us on LinkedIn. We love to be connected with you all on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. For now, I would like to invite the audience to come back and show your video if you would like to thank Tony and Sarah in virtually.
Thank you all.